This session on OER Colorado is going to look at how educators can be wonderful leaders and advocates in the OER world, and both inside Colorado, in your districts, in your local settings, but also in the larger global piece. And so we're excited to have some guests with us today to share some structures that Colorado has created. We would love for you in the chat box to share your name and role in education. What are you currently doing? What institution you're with? It's helpful for us to know how familiar you are with OER. And if you'll share someone in your life that you have learned from their leadership. Who is someone? Yeah, I need to edit that to put a question mark at the end. Who is someone in your life that you have learned from their leadership? And you can be vague. You can say, I had a principal once. You can shout their name out into the universe. You can tell us a lot about them. But it's a chance for us to think a little bit about the different ways that leadership shows up. Thanks so much for sharing in the chat. Lots of great shout outs there in the chat. As we go through today's session and we think a bit about what it means to be a leader and how you might want to be a leader in the OER space, I hope that whoever you mentioned, that you give them those flowers and you celebrate them in some way so that they know that their leadership has impacted you. In today's session, we will do a little bit of review about what OER are, because it's always best practice to make sure that everyone has a common understanding. It looks like most folks today have had some background experience, but there are also some folks who OER is brand new to them. So we'll look at all of this together. And we also have a whole set of additional resources that talk more about OER that we'll be sure to share with you in a follow-up email at the end of this session, which is also the end of this series. Our goal in today's webinar is really to look at your concept of leadership and how you would want to both identify what parts of you are strong leadership characteristics and develop a plan to support advocating for OER. Even if this is your first time hearing about OER, OER is one of those things, open educational resources, that I'll be standing in line at the grocery store talking to people about licensing. I do want to invite Mallory if you'd like to unmute Mallory and say hi and share a bit about yourself and a little bit about OER Colorado from the Colorado side.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I am Mallory Clem, and I am with the Colorado Department of Education. And as you see on this slide, gives just a little bit of context about OER Colorado in our space. If you joined in our first 2 May webinars or last week for our first October fall webinar of this 4-webinar series, great to see you again. Hopefully this all sounds familiar. And when we talk about OER Colorado, You do see on the slide PK through 12 plus, but definitely want to share that in Colorado, two different approaches with OER. OERColorado is managed by our K through 12 Colorado Department of Education team. Our Colorado Department of Higher Education does have some different aspects to OER that they manage under legislation and funding, but we do a lot of cross collaboration with our higher ed system and our community college system. So while the oversight of OER Colorado is really for our K through 12 educators and staff, we do have a lot of resources that represent pre-K and then CTE and beyond high school. So thank you for being here and joining us to hear about how you can be a leader and advocate for OER in your communities, in your school districts. You're going to hear from three fantastic people who are coming from our school district communities and have another perspective from the state level to give some tips about how to approach OER and how to make this happen in your realm of education. So thanks for joining, and thanks, Joanna, for letting me say hi real quick.
Thanks so much, Mallory. We're so grateful at ISKME to be collaborating with Colorado to support this platform. And one of the things that we want to share, and Mallory, feel free to jump in here, is that when you look in the open world, there are a lot of different types of resources out there, and there is no specific endorsement of resources. There's a lot of connection to teacher experience, local guidelines. And so we really encourage you, as you find resources and connect with other educators, to always use your best practices, your content knowledge, your pedagogical knowledge to connect with your district school curriculum expectations and see how you might use or remix resources to meet the needs of your local students. We do want to invite you to join the OER Colorado community if you haven't already. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link to OER Colorado into the chat box. And in just a moment, I'll share a specific group that you can join. And we'll talk a little bit about the way that OER Colorado is built as a platform. And those of you who have already spent time on OER Colorado, feel free to drop some pearls of wisdom or your favorite things about the platform as I talk about it, so that those who are new can learn from your experience. OER Colorado is what we call at ISKME a microsite. So ISKME runs OER Commons, which is a global OER repository and collaboration space. OER Colorado is specifically for Colorado educators and community members. And so you do have to get an approved account to join OER Colorado. And when you land on OER Colorado, you can look for resources. That's one of the main reasons why folks are coming to OER Colorado and OER Commons. But there are also places where you can connect with others. So you can join groups. You can even make groups. So when you choose See All Groups, you'll also have the option to create a group. And these groups allow for collaboration, discussion, saving and sharing resources. And then you can also join what are called hubs. Hubs are a bigger organizational structure, and these allow for resources to be curated and organized in a slightly more sophisticated way. It's also where you can organize your groups, you can embed videos, you can create collections. And so hubs are made on the design part of the platform. So that's something that has to be built by Colorado and by ISKME, but you are welcome to create a group at any time and invite folks to join that group and look for different groups that you want to join. So if you need help setting up your free account, feel free to drop that in the chat or reach out to me after today's webinar. We do want to invite you to join this specific group. This is the OER webinars group. So I'll put that into the chat box. And if you're wanting to get participation activity certificate for today, then we are asking that you make sure that you join the group and participate in the discussion that we'll post at the end of today's session. So we're going to pause for about 3 minutes here, and I'm going to ask you to either spend this time joining this particular group if you haven't yet, or searching for another group. I know we have some OER experts on the session today, so this is a great time for you to go through, and you can use the filters to look for different groups, and then we'll kind of report out in about 3 minutes which groups did you join. You'll notice that there are links to join specific hubs as well. And so once you join that particular group and you contribute to the group, right? So I'm already in this group, then you'll start to get any notifications from the hub level also. So I'm going to pause the recording because we really want to give you this time today to start to look and make those connections. Who are the other educators that you want to connect with on your OER journey? So I'm going to pause the recording, but I'll watch the chat box. And if you need any help, you can. So we'd love to have you unmute or put in the chat box. What group are you part of? What group did you find? Did you not find a group and you want to make a group? So we just want to take about 2 minutes here to give you a chance to share out what you found and what you think, how you think it might be useful to you. Anybody find something? Find a group that you're feeling excited about?
I am still joining some groups, but yes, I have a couple of roles. So one is with the Department of Education, and one's at Arapahoe Community College. So there's a number of options that I might be able to kind of look at. So that's great. I did join this webinar group as well.
Great, thanks, Spencer. Sam shared that she joined the ISKME group to stay on top of what's happening with OER, and also joined the STEM and STEAM group. Rachel joined the Special Populations group. Veronica joined the dual enrollment hub. Lots of dual enrollment students at her context and across the Colorado Community College system. Absolutely, yes. So one of the big goals of OER is to be able to be this customizable resource that you can take some content and you can customize it to meet your population's learning needs. So if you have students with IEPs and 504s and specific learning disabilities, or you have a student who's a multi-language learner and they need some support on some vocabulary, or you have students who are taking a course and they need the curriculum to be advanced a little bit more so that it meets the needs of the community college level for the dual enrollment. There are so many ways to customize OER, and it's one of the great things to shout out about OER. So I'm excited that you all have joined some groups. The place that I want to push you is that a great note about the groups is that the discussions, once you join a group, the discussions can be posted by anyone. So you'll see that when each group was created, there was a welcome discussion. And so anyone who's in a group can add a new thread. So it might be one of those things where you say, hey, I have 15 minutes to myself today. Shocker. What am I going to do with it? I might jump in this group and I might ask a question, or I might share a resource. And so we just really want to invite you to use these groups because they're here to allow you to connect with other OER experts and advocates. And it's a big piece of open education as a practice. And so we do want to share with you that in addition to being connected with ISKME, you can also connect with a nonprofit advocacy organization called Spark or the Go Open Network, both of which work not only nationally, but globally to make connections between OER and educators and the resources, and really helping open education resources be accessible to all. A quick reminder of what OER, openly licensed educational resources, are. They're any teaching and learning material. So a lot of times at the higher ed level, folks are thinking that it's just in regards to a textbook, like a zero textbook cost. But anything that is helping students learn. So lots of videos now are released with Creative Commons licenses. Images, right? That's a big one that we want to teach and model for our students. And so you'll see at the end of this slide deck is a page where I'm giving attribution and links for all of the images that we use. And so that's a great best practice that you can, again, be a leader on, right? If you're leading professional learning, if you're creating things for your students, making sure that you give attribution. I did learn from Luis Perez at CAST. If you haven't yet connected with CAST, they're a great accessibility advocacy organization. And he's who really taught me that we don't want attributions in a slide deck. It makes it difficult for the screen reader to access. So put all your image attributions in an appendix, in a slide at the end, in a footnote, and that way it doesn't interrupt the user's experience of the content. And these are all such wonderful ways to be OER leaders. As we talk and go through today, you'll find yourself thinking, oh, well, that's a way for me to help explain OER to folks. That's something that I can make those connections of why OER is so important, because we want resources to be customizable. A lot of resources that teachers are used to working with have this full copyright, all rights reserved. And just a quick reminder, in the United States, anytime that someone creates a new original work and puts it in a concrete representation, like a recording, something written or drawn, and an actual record of the new art and new resource that they created, then it automatically receives full copyright according to US copyright code. It's then up to the author to choose if they want to release all of the rights and put the work in the public domain, which means you don't even have to give attribution. Or we used to give out custom licenses and really complicated terms of use. Creative Commons is a nonprofit that has created a set of licenses that I'll explain on the next slide that gives really clear terms of use to folks to explain what rights are still reserved by the author and what rights are being released so that others can retain and reuse, and all the great things about openly licensed resources. So there are the Creative Commons license, the base license is called CC BY, and this is where you would always give attribution. So you'll see CC BY on all the rest of these Creative Commons licenses. When you are creating new work, if you're choosing to put a Creative Commons license on it, you can just type CC BY like we did on the very first slide here, or you can grab these images. It is also always helpful to link to that license so that folks who don't yet know what Creative Commons is can click on a link to the license and understand what that does mean. If you've just written CC BY, they might not know what that means. But now that you see it, you're not going to really unknow it, right? Everywhere you go, you'll hopefully be seeing some Creative Commons licenses. This image, for example, comes with it embedded the CCO public domain attribution. And If you're really interested in the licenses and what each one means, we'll make sure to share the previous videos and other resources. In today's session, we're just going to do a really quick review that CC by ND, if you add the ND restriction on it, it means you cannot make changes. You have to use it in the exact way that that resource was created by the author, by the creator. So an example that I like to give is if I sing a lullaby to my kids and I make a recording of it, if I put CC by on that recording, folks can perform it themselves. They can remix it. They can change the wording. They could translate it to another language. They could put it on their website. They can do anything they want as long as they give me credit. And that's what a CC by license would allow. If you add the no derivative works restriction, then it means that people can share it. They could reshare it on social media. They could put it on their website, but they can't make any changes to my original recording. So some resources are shared even in the open world with an ND no derivative. We see that a lot of times when, for example, in math, if the pedagogy was designed really specifically, you need to teach this before you teach that, and we want you to say it in this way. Sometimes folks will put an ND restriction on there. They'll also sometimes see it with research. So if research is being shared openly so that folks can learn and use and reshare it, sometimes ND will be put on that license because folks don't want their research to be changed, the analysis of the research to be changed. There are two other restrictions that you can put on the basic CC by license. So if we look here, CC by SA, that means share alike. What that means isn't no derivative, right? So no derivative means you can't make any changes to the resource. Share alike is in regard to the license. So if I put CC by SA on my work, that means that I'm sharing it with the CC by SA license. You can make derivatives, you can put it on your website, you can share it, you can do anything you want, but you have to keep the CC by SA license on mine and on yours. So if you take a chapter that I wrote and you put it in your textbook that you're creating, then your whole entire work would have to be licensed the same as mine, CC by SA, because that work has to always be shared with that license. Some folks will also want to put a non-commercial license restriction on their license, meaning that no one could ever make money from there. So if I write a chapter for a textbook and I openly license it, you can't take that chapter and put it in a textbook that you're selling. If I put that non-commercial restriction on it, that means that my work always has to be free. It can never be for commercial uses. So those are a lot of licenses. And so I hope that for those of you who are experts, maybe you can share a little bit in the chat box about the license maybe that you've put on your own work or the license that you tend to search for. Anybody want to unmute and kind of share questions or thoughts about licensing? Ooh, I'm gonna have to take a minute and show you guys how to search for the specific license. Becca, I'm really glad that this is new to you. I hope it's new in a like, come to the light side. Hopefully it's not too like fire hydrant, overwhelming new. Spencer, thanks for sharing the specific license that is your go-to. Yeah, we see a lot of sometimes organizations such as ISKME or Colorado Department of Ed will choose the CC by NCSA. That license, although it seems like there's a lot of restrictions in the OER world, it's really not a lot of restrictions. It's just trying to say, this is open, keep it open, always keep it open. So CC by NCSA is really just putting those restrictions to make sure that something that was created open will always stay open. The only place it gets a little tricky is when you're doing some remixing and you're trying to combine licenses, then it becomes a little tricky because some licenses might have CC by SA. If you have a CC by NCSA, then you can't really combine them always in the way that you want. And thanks, Spencer, for sharing. It's great to see when states are really encouraging and requiring resources that are created using state funding, that those resources then have to be free to the public. That's a huge piece. So just as a quick review, the big goal of OER is to allow educators, community members, anyone to do these 5 R's. The first is retain, right? So you can download a copy and you could always keep a copy of it. The next, I'm going to come back to 2 and 3 because reuse is another one, right? So if there's a video shared, I can share it. I can reuse it. I can put it on my learning management system in my Canvas course. And that also has to do with redistributing. I could put it in a module that I then publish and share out. I can share it in all sorts of different ways. Revising is going to be a little bit more complicated if we're talking about that's where that no derivative restriction comes into play. If you put no derivative on a resource, you can still retain, reuse, and redistribute it, but you're not allowing folks to revise it, which is complicated because in OER, we want resources to be up to date. We want them to be relevant. We want them to be specific to the needs of different learners. So revising is where you're making changes, and remix is where you're combining things in new ways. And so the goal of, as Spencer said, putting that CC BY on or those other licenses that allow for remixing is to keep resources open. Before we go to the leadership part, I do want to take a minute, since some folks said they didn't know how, they had never searched by license before. If you're on OERColorado, and feel free to play along, right, in a different tab or window, or just watch. When you land on OERColorado, there's a search bar here, but my favorite is to go to the advanced search. And when I go to the advanced search, I can put my keyword here. So I like to use economics. I can narrow it down by subject area if I want. I can narrow it down by, I want to specifically look for a resource aligned to either English language arts standards, math, or next gen science. But if you scroll down, this is where the license types are on the advanced search. And so I can say, well, I know I want to remix it. So I might click conditional remix. Okay, I'm willing to use any of these licenses, or unrestricted use. So if I do a search for economics with these selected, then I'm saying I don't want those no derivatives to show. I don't want to have to read the fine print. I want to find something that I can remix. And then when I run my search, there's a lot of results here, right? So I could even be more specific, and I could say, well, I only want things that are in the public domain, or I want to look for things by a certain provider or a certain material type. Maybe I know I really want something with a video included in it. Yeah, it's one of our favorite things about the platform and the way that our librarians and designers have tried to make it easy to find OER. Sam, go ahead.
So I just am wondering, I think that from my lens, one of the, I guess, I wouldn't call it a barrier, but I think one point of learning that might be beneficial for just broad swaths of educators, and I'm wondering if maybe this resource already exists, is some kind of short video or like sort of chunked information around like distinguishing this from because for many, I was a classroom teacher for 9 years, right? And for many classroom teachers, it's sort of like, well, why would I use this when I can just Google something, right? And so I mean, there's obviously very good answers for that. Like there's quality control, there's vetting. It's much easier in a lot of ways to make adjustments, like you said, retain it, all of that stuff. And so I think that for many classroom teachers, I wonder like if their lens is like, well, how is this that different than what I'm already doing when I just pull something off teachers pay teachers or something. And so I think that it's just part of our collective role to educate people on like the advantages of this. But I also am just wondering if there's like a 1 or 2 minute video or something that maybe already exists in this platform or is on YouTube. Like, why would I use this instead of just Googling something? Like I said, I know we know the answers to those questions, but just like maybe there's a one pager or something like that.
Mallory, do you want to jump in first and then I'll follow up?
I'll have you go, Joanna. I'm not aware of any resource that Sam is kind of asking about, so.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know all of the asset mapping things that you might have at the Department of Ed. So Sam, those are fabulous questions and things that we talk about a lot. And we do have some resources that are made like that are specific to OER Commons. I think in the case of when there are specific microsites, like Colorado has one, North Carolina has one, Texas. It helps when like the branding is on there. So it would be a really great thing that I would love to facilitate with you all to help you create. We can give you our templates and we can help you film the video and edit the video and publish and caption and that sort of thing. Because what I know also as a classroom teacher, I'm a K-12 certified biology teacher. I actually still teach biology to students with disabilities in the evenings. And what I know is that what we're going to see is educators who come to OER from a lot of different places. So there's no one reason why teachers will kind of shift their mindset around where they get resources. And so it'd be really amazing to, make a few little videos and think about how you share that. So for example, you're going to have a ton of beginning educators who are in their first year, or maybe they're a expert educator, but they're teaching a new course. And it is easier for a lot of folks to just start with their favorite search engine. So what we can do is we can kind of like back channel and work together to design what is it that folks need to hear in that moment, to be able to effectively find things that they can use.
Right. I'm sorry, but like, what about pre-service programs? Like, I almost wonder, because I look at this through the lens of like, what are the barriers? Like, why aren't more people using it? And I think that it's really just a matter of capacity, of course, because educators are so overworked, in my opinion, not speaking for CDE, of course. But I also just think maybe if there was just an opportunity to educate people, because I think people just might not know that this is out there. So anyway, I'm not trying to task and be happy to help. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that, Spencer.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't think it's exactly what you were looking for, Sam, but it is. I remember Teresa putting those up, like how to, a little bit of like how to navigate, that sort of thing too.
yeah, we made those, and hopefully they're really helpful. And so I love that, Sam and Spencer and folks on the call. I tell people I'm your OER fairy godmother. I will always say, like, yes, you don't even have to be crying in a garden. You can just reach out and say, do you have this? Can we make this? Because Sam, your idea of pre-service is another amazing thing that a lot of states have started to do. It can be as simple as just if you have a connection to pre-service educators or to beginning teachers. We did a lot of work with North Carolina's team with their beginning teachers. That was a target population that we focused on, and just helping folks find things. So one of the great things that is exciting. It are these hubs and these places where you can put resources that other folks have already curated and vetted and checked for alignment and made adaptations to. It's one of the great ways that you can kind of get the ball rolling for folks. Because we have created a little bit of our own mess where folks are buying resources with their own money and charging to use each other's resources. And we know now that there's a different way that it can be done. So yes, I would love to, after today, chat as openly as you want, as often as you want, to help continue this work in Colorado. I'll actually be out there in November for a session at Higher Ed. So I'd love to connect with you all and communicate and collaborate and keep pushing what you all are doing. So yeah, feel free to drop anything else in the chat, and then I think you should have my email address. So let's connect after today to see what you know you could do, and then what you dream you could do. Because from the open education standpoint, we really come from a design thinking viewpoint of, let's dream really big and imagine that we could do anything, and then see what ends up happening from there. Because a lot of those things, like Sam said, the little videos, the little one-pagers, those are things that exist that we can modify specifically for Colorado and help get in the hands of, like you said, the educators who have their sails up and are ready to hear about something new. Especially because one of the pieces that I'm not sure how much Colorado districts are doing is there are entire curriculum sets that are now openly licensed. So that is really key for when districts are doing adoptions, is to make sure that they're considering openly licensed full curriculum sets so that teachers aren't piecemealing things together. They might still be supplementing and augmenting and modifying, but when you use an openly licensed main curriculum, then that's encouraged anyway. So I want to take a moment here to ask everyone who's on our call to pick one of these leadership traits. So this is not an all-expansive definition of what leadership is, but I'd like for you to work in these characteristics, right? So when we look at these different ones, competence, communication, responsibility, skills, motivation, support, teamwork, and power, these 8 leadership traits, I'd like for you to pick one, and in the chat box, connect it to open education and OER, right? So you might say, well, competence in OER looks like putting an open license attribution for every image that I use. That's how I'm a competent OER leader, is I make sure that I give attribution every time that I use an image or someone else's work. So I'm going to pause. Oh, thanks, Mallory. I'm going to pause here and ask you just real quickly to jot that down, because then next we're going to hear from some of our guest speakers. And so before we hear about their leadership journeys, I'm going to just ask you to take a second to think about one of these and put in the chat box what it is. And then I think Becca will have you up first.
Sure, happy to jump in. Did you want me to wait a few minutes or just kind of go for it now?
Go for it now. We'll come back to those other characteristics.
Okay, sounds great. Hi everyone, my name is Becca Rolliter. I work for Cherry Creek Schools. I'm one of the PK-12 district science specialists. I feel very fortunate. This is my 4th year in this role. And I'm just kind of reading what I said from, a few months ago. But I came into this role as a new person supporting PK-12 science and coming from out of state, where we had very scripted curriculum and curricular resources. My job was to basically kind of redo and revamp the science ed curricular resources for K-5. And if you are familiar with any of the resources for K-5 at the time, there was not, we use Ed Reports as like our big thing in our district. And so there was not a K-5 resource out there to pull from. So that led me on this journey of trying to find high quality resources. So it was a lot of searching NSTA and NGSS websites, a lot of digging through resources and like articles and things that I could find. And basically through that kind of created at least as best as we could, a comprehensive K-5 curricular resource using only OER resources or in-house created units. And so I would tell you that that is a very interesting approach to take. There was lots of learning that needed to be done around what OER means, and a little bit of confusion because our district was so used to, if you work in a school district, like districts are so used to just like getting the thing and like teaching the thing. But we all know that when you are, no curriculum is perfect, no curricular resource is perfect, regardless if you spend no money on it or you spend millions and millions of dollars on it. And so we basically had the decision to either wait until a high quality resource came out and then potentially pay a bunch of money, or to move forward with the integrity of the next generation science standards and try to, find something, put something together that really pushes our students into being, thinking, and doing the things that scientists and engineers actually do. So we started that transition a few years ago. We started that transition my first year working at the state or at the district level, which you can imagine lots of fun, anxiety-filled moments as a person of one leading, 55,000 kids. But that there are lots of learning. And I think the thing personally that I really love about OER, I'm new to like the licensing emblems and all of those things, but I probably remix things that maybe I shouldn't have remixed. I don't know, I'm finding that out right now, but you live and learn. But I think the biggest thing that I love about OER is it allows teachers to be responsive to the students in their classroom, and that there is more, I don't like saying teaching a unit or a resource with fidelity, but with integrity. And I feel like there's more integrity and more buy-in with teachers when they can take an open resource and fit it to fit the students that are in front of them, whether that is phenomenon that is relevant to those students, or leveraging resources that really utilize student identity and interest. And so we are now a few years into using OER at the K-5 level, and our math partner in our district also is now using an OER resource for math. So I'm hopeful that more teachers or more school districts will start to see the benefits of OER. We've used Open Science at the middle school level, which is a very popular open ed resource as well. So yeah, there's lots of learning along the way, but I think that personally, I think that there's a lot of freedom in OER. Freedom to remix, freedom to design, freedom to have that autonomy that a lot of these teachers feel are maybe losing a little bit whenever they're given this like store-bought curriculum. So that's my story.
Becca, that's wonderful. I'll just ask because I know you have to jump off in a few minutes and we have our others here. And so I'm just going to ask you each a question and then let the next person speak and see if there are other questions from our group. And when you have to jump off, I definitely understand. But curious what your educators that you're working with response to when you kind of share OER with them. Like, did they seem like, oh, okay, whatever? Or do they like, what's their reaction?
It's a mixed bag, I will tell you. I think in reflecting, I wish I would have rolled it out a little bit differently, because we did a huge sweeping district-wide change, and we started with a small group of teachers, like our champions. And I wish that there's a little bit more of a gradual shift so that there could be more learning that was going on. It was kind of, when the change happened, is a little bit of a sense of urgency. So it was why it was kind of a big sweeping movement. I would say that some teachers were a little confused, why don't we just have a, store-bought curriculum? But after kind of giving the very real facts of the time of like, we don't have very many options, and so this is what we're doing. There was a little bit more, I think, like empathy and understanding that science ed might be a little bit behind in terms of like the amount of resources that are out there. And there was a little bit more freedom in teachers saying, and teachers bringing in their own lenses, especially teachers that had been teaching that content for a while or had a local connection that I would have missed being someone not from Colorado. So there was a little bit more agency, and with that agency and like choice, I think came heavier buy-in. But definitely a mixed bag, I would say at first.
Anybody else have some questions for Becca? Becca, I know you're going to have to jump off, so feel free to stay on as much as you want. And I'll look forward to connecting with you as a science teacher. I love lifting up the work that other OER science lovers are doing. So Sam, would love to let you share a little bit about your journey and what you're seeing and doing and wanting to see.
Sure. So I'm Sam. I'm the science content specialist, and I think I'm going to turn my camera off. I live way out in the country, and we've been having some connectivity issues. Sorry about that. But my OER, I guess, journey started in 2016. I worked with researchers and teachers to write part of iHub, which is through CU and is now part of OpenSciEd. And so use those classroom materials for years as part of pilots, collecting data, and did some like larger scale PL around it. And I would say in my role now, things have shifted a little bit, simply because I'm not in a classroom. I appreciate OER because I think that it democratizes the instructional materials development process in a lot of ways. And I think that there's a lot of money in K through 12 education, and I did work for a publisher between this role and being in a classroom, and I appreciate the I guess like the transparency, if you will, like the someone in the, I think it was somebody in the chat pointed out collaboration, or it was Veronica for teamwork, right? Like the amount of teamwork that went into building those units, and it was all very transparent. And so I really appreciate that aspect of it. And in my line of work now, although I'm not directly using OER materials, I do at times consult districts on evidence-based tools that they can use to evaluate curricular resources. And I think sometimes it occurs to folks that they can use those same tools for OER resources, and sometimes it doesn't. And so in the slide, in the notes section, I just copied and pasted a few of those evidence-based tools. And so, for instance, if you're talking about the evaluation of an entire instructional set of materials through the lens of instructional leader, you'd want to use the Next Gen Time tool, which is designed for this purpose and does just a phenomenal job of helping educators see alignment and like things like vertical articulation. And those are obviously things that can also be seen in evaluating OER materials. And then more recently, there's been work on the assessment portion. There's a big push in science. As Becca mentioned, there are at least OpenSciEd, iHub, and maybe even I think that there are a few others here and there, like Sprocket, for instance. Some of them do have OER licenses, and that's really on the instructional side. As we move move through the sort of evolution, if you will, of three-dimensional learning and teaching from NGSS. Now folks are really digging deeply into the assessment side. And so now there are actual tools that have been developed that can be screeners for openly developed assessment tasks. And there are data and taking a look at them. So I'm happy to answer any other questions, but I'm really excited about the OER work here in Colorado. And I want to thank Joanna, Spencer, Mallory. Thank you so much for supporting it.
Sam, this is great. I'm going to ask you a quick question and then we'll let anyone else on
Sure.
the call ask. Curious if you see educators doing that remixing part. Do they share those remixes with you? Are you getting alerts? Like how are you seeing it kind of actually show up that OER are actually getting adapted?
So that's funny that you asked that, Joanna, because there's actually a lot of evidence-based work happening there because of all of the OER work that's occurring in the science space. And so I have sort of a two-pronged answer for you. I think on the level of classroom educators, you see a lot of remixing, not necessarily with just OER materials. Sometimes, I mean, quite frankly, educators remix things with all sorts of things. And I think that oftentimes we see great engagement and quality. I do think, though, that just a little bit of education around, for instance, the vetting that goes on with OER materials and the ease of use, I think could be helpful in folks' day-to-day in terms of saving time, potentially. And I think that you know, the other lens, more, I guess, like a sort of a developer or a PL, professional learning leader, there's a lot of work coming out now around evidence-based guidelines, if you will, for adjusting curricular materials. Like, why are you making the change, for instance? Is it still on grade level? Is it still aligned with the standard? So there's a lot of from that sort of, I guess, more broader lens, there's a lot of work happening around how can we support educators in making evidence-based remixes, if you will, in ways that are going to enhance student learning. So I don't know if that directly answers your question. The work is happening, which is great.
Yeah, I Sam, want to follow up again after today because I think one of the goals of OER Colorado and you know, the whole OER movement at OER Commons is this ability to see when remixes are happening. Many folks are doing work in a Google Drive or a Microsoft Office platform, and we don't know where the work is, and we don't know how it's being changed, and we can't shout it out, and we can't leverage it. And so it's really exciting to be able to see and hear and track and see the impact on students, but also see that impact on educators and how they learn more. You know, especially in the science realm and in the history realm and in all of our content areas, when we can learn outside of our own geographical areas and then incorporate geographical specifications, right? We really expand our students' knowledge and scope. So that's really exciting. Anybody have a question for Sam? Well, I have about 100 more, but Spencer, glad to have you here with us. Would love to have you talk a little bit about your OER journey and what you're seeing and doing.
Yeah, thank you to Sam and to Rebecca. I thought that was awesome. I agree with everything they said. I also put something in the chat, which is like, I know a few of you that are on the call, but for those who I haven't, you know, may know you, but maybe not knowing you in this context through the OER. So that would have been Rebecca. I know she left, but Tracy, Veronica, Rachel, you know, what are the things that CDE can do to support your OER journey? is what I think I would love to know. So if you can marinate on that question, that'd be awesome. I'm sure Mallory or Renee, I think, is also on the call, have asked that question, and I'd love to continue exploring that question, because I think that's really the role of the state agencies, is to explore and provide, as Sam mentioned, she's specifically science and STEM content, but she's provided some of those tools and some of those consultations basically to folks who have been coming to her and asking her about OER adoption. So yeah, I think for me, my name is Spencer. I'm the high impact tutoring program manager. So we deal in the world with, high quality instructional materials, training materials, teaching and learning materials, all types of materials that could be OER or sometimes are not. And we have one of our grantees was on the call earlier, Dagan from Greeley. I know he probably had to leave, but I know that you all are doing good work. Veronica and JC, I know that you participated in the higher ed OER grant, at least for a couple of years. I don't know what the status currently is. And for others, it's exciting to hear that folks are interested in OER. So, I mean, I could provide a number of different, if you go to the next slide, Joanna, I could provide a number of different, details or supports or tools. So I threw those onto the slides, and I'm guessing you'll get this as a resource afterward. But, whatever you're looking for, I think between Mallory and Renee's office and then mine and Sam's office, we could really support you all with what you're looking for in terms of the OER world. Is it the advocacy piece, right? Are you looking for those tools to do some kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the work? What are the pieces that you're looking for? So I think coming back to that question is really important to me. So I linked a few studies here just to say, there's good emerging research, there's good evidence to support the work that's being done out there. Sometimes we don't know who's picking our course materials. And I think it's cool to investigate that at your local level. Like, who's in charge of that? Is it the department head? Is it the course instructor? Is it a selection committee? I have an example here. For example, Jeffco Public Schools has a curriculum textbook material selection committee. Do people even know what OER is on that committee? At Adams 14, I'm not sure. I think you have a selection materials and selection committee as well. So I know that this can be something to explore at the local level as well. And that's one thing I wanted to bring up. If you're looking for studies, like how does OER impact student success? I'll link a few of those in the chat here. What we found over the course of the last few years is there's basically no difference between student success for using proprietary materials and using OER materials. So if you're looking to advocate, there's a couple of articles, a couple of research articles linked in that first link. In fact, there was a research project done and an article written from the University of Northern Colorado that showed positive impact from the use of OER in a particular course. So that's the second link that I included there. And then the third one, are we looking to one of the things that Joanna and Mallory mentioned was talking about the role of OER in rural communities. I think that's a really fascinating topic, and it looks like Arizona has a big initiative, and they've come out with some research to support the work that they're doing. So I think checking into, what's out there, what can CDE do to provide you all with further information. One thing that Sam mentioned, which I think is huge, and we've seen in post-secondary, at least in Colorado, is like capacity, right? Do people have the bandwidth to work with OER? And I think that's why the incentive funding program, the grant program through Department of Higher Ed has been really helpful. I don't know, is that something that CDE should be exploring? Like, we want you all to tell us what you want, what would be helpful in this journey. So Joanne, if you go to the last page, I think there's one more page of stuff. Oh yeah, so then these are just kind of like general themes and advantages of OER. If you're looking to advocate locally, you're reducing cost not only to students, but also to the district. Sam mentioned how costly some of these textbook contracts can be. And I know that they're long-term sometimes with some providers. access to up-to-date resources you can remix, as Rebecca was mentioning, and meet the needs of your local students. So those kind of number 2 and number 3. And then Joanna, maybe one more slide. I'm sorry. There were a couple more points, I think. Yeah, collaboration, right? We were talking about teachers pay teachers, you know, it's in that same vein, that same spirit. Professional development. So, you know, are we using these OER to develop, you know, specific types of professional development that can be scaled and shared? And then supporting diverse learners. I think all these things were kind of discussed in some capacity. So yeah, that's my bit, and I'm happy to connect with folks in the future if you want to brainstorm, or if I can support Joanna, your work, or Mallory and Renee, your work, or any of the work going on at the districts, most certainly. And the last thing I'll mention is, if you're interested in our grant, which isn't specifically OER, but it's high impact tutoring, any K-12 LEA, local education agency can apply, and we're opening up our grant for high impact tutoring in January. So if you're interested, drop me a note.
Love it. Thanks, Spencer. These are really great resources. So glad that you're sharing them. I'm curious, Spencer, since I think some of your work includes a lot more collaboration on like a leadership level. Curious if you find other leaders really ready to dig into OER, or does it take a little extra convincing?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think it's about, Rebecca mentioned the approach, right? We don't want to come in heavy-handed. And so a lot of the groups that we've worked with, I think it's the value proposition. You know, why is this a benefit to me, or to my students, or to my district, or to my community? Kind of demonstrating that value proposition and then entering into the conversation, I think, is really helpful. So on the hub, you'll see that Arapahoe Community College has its own, what are they called, group, its own group. I also work at Arapahoe Community College, and so I know that we've been kind of thinking about how do we reach back in one of those warm, maybe connection areas to connecting higher ed or post-secondary to K-12 is through concurrent or dual enrollment, which is big in our state and many other states. And so how do we continue to explore support with any of that? I know that we provide a lot of concurrent enrollment. I know that NJC does as well. Veronica, I know that you are a big concurrent enrollment provider, but students who may be taking those courses, it's like a warm place to start. And that's not to say that there aren't, you know, K through 10 materials or K through 9 materials, but I think concurrent enrollment is a natural place to start. So looking for those places that feel like warm connections, demonstrating the value, given that value proposition to people, I think those are where you see a lot of successes, Joanna. It's a really good question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Spencer. And I'd love to follow up with you as well. I'm looking forward to, it's so great to meet you all, and I'm looking forward to really supporting the work that you all are doing. And so Spencer and Sam and Becca are part of the Friends of OER Colorado group. There are additional testimonials and experiences there. Mallory, did you want to add anything else?
No, these are fantastic share outs. Sam, Spencer, and then I know Becca has left. Thank you for sharing your perspective. I think OER can be a little bit intimidating sometimes, but normalizing it's really for student resources and best practice. I know we kind of talked at the beginning, you know, Colorado with local control. We at the state level really honor that. So we really encourage our educators to work in their communities with their district leaders on the uniqueness of how you all approach curriculum and supplemental resources, and how OER can really fit into your communities and school districts. Like Joanna said, Friends of OER Colorado just lists out some other folks who weren't able to make it and share out today, and their experiences with OER Colorado and their education setting. So great to check out. And then there's also various Colorado entities, different education organizations that are noted at the bottom that support OER Colorado. So really we try to focus on partnering up with different education groups throughout the state, and finding ways to collaborate and promote the use of OER. And then you'll also see on the Friends of OER Colorado page, this specific project for the state initially started with GEAR funding, which is our governor's funding. So our governor's office has been really supportive on continuously and recently posting about OER Colorado and really trying to get the word out there, in addition to CDE trying to get the word out there as well. So hopefully those of you who signed up and attended maybe saw some of our advertising and promotion for this webinar series in our CDE spaces or on social media. Did link our LinkedIn account for OER Colorado if you want to take a look at who else in terms of leaders in our education system in Colorado really support this, if it helps justify use of OER in your communities and can really see all the organizations and advocates for this. I think really speaks volumes to the state really promoting this for you all and students.
Oh, Mallory is such a wonderful leader for this work. So thank you for all that you're doing, Mallory, to really lift this work up and lift up the work of those who are doing this at the state, district, and school level. So it's so wonderful to connect with them. What I want to do is just take a minute to make an offering to folks, because what we want to do today is also give you some work time to imagine what you might do in the next week, month, 6 months, or year. And so we've created a planning and impact template. So this is a resource on OER Colorado. And if you click that link, and I'll put the link in the chat box as well. And what we're going to invite you to do is do some remixing today. And so we have created this template. And when you click on the link, if you have the embedded link from the slide deck, then you already have it. Otherwise, you can click on this link and it's going to open up the landing page of this resource. Keep in mind, you won't see everything that I have. I have these admin superpowers at the top. But you will be, if you're logged in, if you have an account and you're logged in, you'll be able to view the resource in just a minute, but you can also save it to a folder that you have or create a new folder. You won't be able to edit or delete this one because this is mine, but in just a minute, you'll be able to click the remix button because this resource is licensed CC BY NCSA, which means that you can make derivatives, you can edit it, revise it, share it, do anything you want as long as you give attribution. And this is an OER Colorado resource. So we'll fix exactly who the author is. It's me and OER Colorado. But when you click remix, and I challenge you to hit that button right now, when you click remix, it's going to do something similar to what Google Drive does when you file, make a copy. It has now made a copy of this resource in your My Items. And so we encourage you to start by changing the title of it. So you might add your last name or something else in the title up at the top. You can change the image if you want. The attribution for this image is given on the next page when you add the metadata for the resource. And if you've already clicked remix, then you really don't need this main content. It's telling you how to remix this by clicking remix, changing the title, and then you would delete this section. So I encourage you to, if you've already changed your title to include your name, delete that first section. It's just telling folks how to remix it. And so we want to give you some time now. We're going to pause for about 6 or 7 minutes and ask you to come back to these leadership qualities and pick 1 or 2 to describe as your strengths. So you might say, I'm really strong in competence, right? I really know the what of OER and I do the what all the time. Or I talk about OER all the time. Or I'm really responsible. I keep learning about OER. I take this role, you know, really importantly. I'm on listservs. I'm continuously part of the community. You might have the skills of OER. You might really know the licenses. You might be creating OER. So take a minute to identify some of these as strengths and growth. And if you want, you can also go ahead and explore section 2, which is creating an actual plan. So you won't be able to fill this whole thing out in the next 10 minutes of our session together today. But we really encourage you to work on this section here where you think about your strengths and what you might want to work on. So I'm going to pause the recording for the next about 5 minutes. And if you have questions, feel free to unmute. So we want to come back together and just get a feel for, did you click the remix button? If you did, great, celebrate that in the chat. If you didn't, maybe tell us your thoughts or what's holding you back or what barriers you feel are kind of there. We want to give this a chance for folks to unmute and speak into the space if they want, or to put in the chat box. But curious your thoughts about these OER leadership offerings, your reflection, clicking remix. So I'll be quiet so you all can speak.
Hi, if I may just share, I thought it was a really neat resource, and from CDE's perspective, you know, we're leading this, and but this type of resource definitely could help us in just creating more focus on what we might need to strategize and which areas. So I thought it was excellent, and thank you for sharing it.
Thanks, Renee, for joining, and really glad that the resource seems like it would be valuable. Happy to support you as you want to remix it and make edits to make it make more sense to your context. Anybody else? So I'm going to take a minute here and first ask you to make sure that you have joined the group. It's really important if you're wanting your credit for today that you have joined the group so that you can be part of the discussion. I'm going to link the discussion in just a second. And that discussion board is going to be there for you to complete in order to receive the credit for participating for today. We are asking that you have given it a try to click that remix, because we think that it's really important that when you're working on OER that you're doing that work of the OER. So the last thing that we're going to be asking in the discussion board is who you think you might want to collaborate. OER is not really intended to be a solo journey. And so we really hope that you will be finding your OER colleagues. And so in the discussion board prompt, we're going to ask you to consider who you might want to work with. And so a big shout out to Spencer and Sam and Becca for joining today, and to Mallory for all of the work that she has done around OERColorado. And so the discussion board post is posted, and the link that's in here should take you to that main page with all of them. And the reflection survey link is here as well. So if you are planning to receive credit for today, then please make sure that you complete this reflection link, and the certificate will be sent to you. If you need any help at all on the OER Colorado site, there is a support button that follows you around as you go. And so you can click that support button and it'll open up a new support ticket. I did also include the link to the support desk there and my email address that's here. So I'm your OER fairy godmother, excited to continue collaborating with you however you may need. And we'll take this time to make sure that you're able to fill out the reflection survey, work on the discussion board. I'll hang around for a minute or two if you need anything, but thanks so much for joining today.